It's the Growler with BD and Jay. Here to analyze for you today. From Growler Bet to Jay's got stats. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growler Podcast.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of BD and J, Paul Inter Jr., Jay Morrison, here with you as we preview Saturday's game in Pittsburgh as the Bengals try to holding on to hope, Jay, and Happy New Year to you and everybody else.
Yeah, Happy New Year, and maybe it'll be a second year for the Bengals. I still think there's a better chance than people think, but it starts Saturday night. You got to win that one, and then fingers crossed for everybody that roots for this team that some amazing things happen on Sunday.
You're dropping a truth bomb right off the top. You think there's a better chance than people think. Why, Jay? What do you know?
Just the whole cold weather factor and no Tua for Miami, and Aaron Rodgers might retire. He's not going to want to go out a loser. And I just keep going back to 17-1 Chiefs against Denver. Doesn't matter who's playing in that game. If you won 17 out of 18 against a team, there's a good chance you can make it 18 out of 19.
Yeah, Carson Wentz officially starting in that game as we assumed was going to be the case. But yeah, all that Jay thinks it could happen. All right, you're on the record. You're saying
I wouldn't bet on it, but I think it could happen.
You might for value. The odds are long
at
this point. It is, I believe it's up in 1,700 plus 1,700 at this point for that 3-team parlay. If you want it, it's there for you on BetMGM. Go take a look if you're interested. Speaking of BetMGM, Nation Kitchen and Bar down at the Banks. Any big event, any big game day, maybe today. Maybe you want to go watch the Sugar Bowl this afternoon, or you want to go check out the Bengals-Steelers game on Saturday night. And you're like, I just want to make sure there's going to be tons of screens, big screens. The sound's going to be on, good food, good drinks. You know where you can go? You can go to Nation Kitchen and Bar, BetMGM, down at the Banks. Awesome spot. They've got all the things that you want. If you've come to any of our live show, like many of you have, you know how much fun it can be down there. And it should be certainly live on Saturday night, but for any big event, make sure you go and check them out. We today, we kind of wanted to pop back in because we need to touch on the things said by Joe Burrow and by Tee Higgins as well a little bit yesterday. A little bit more in the news cycle. The news cycle continues to churn as Joe Burrow continues to take aim, shall we say, at the Bengals front office and this decision that is looming with Higgins and, of course, negotiations with Jamar Chase and more. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to take a quick game outlook. The Bengals look to go to Pittsburgh. We've got Growler Bets. Jay's got stats. RPB predictions, you know it. You know all the stuff that we do, so we will get to all of that. As far as news, do want to start there. Pro Bowl came out today. The 3 Pro Bowlers you would expect from the Bengals: Joe Burrow, Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase. Joe Mixon made it for the Texans. But outside of that, no major surprises, I guess. Pro Bowl voting, grain of salt.
Yeah, and it's a third the fans, a third the players, and a third coaches. So I do think there's a little more validity to the players and the coaches, but even then, a lot of times they mail them in. It's a popularity contest among those guys as much as it is with the fans. Interesting that Chase Brown was an alternate. I mean, that's a good sign not a good sign for him, but it's a nice accomplishment. He finished 9th in fan voting among AFC running backs. Kind of made a late charge there. He was not in the top 10 on any of the updates until the final one. So maybe next year is the year he breaks through. And then Orlando Brown was a 4th alternate. He missed all those games. And that still kind of shows the respect that he wasn't in the top 10 of fan voting. So that was all players and coaches giving the nod to him to get him that close as he is.
Let's dive into what Joe Burrow had to say. So on the days are so hard to keep track of. Was that Tuesday?
Tuesday, New Year's Eve, yeah.
Tuesday, the normal Wednesday for a Saturday game. So during his weekly media availability, shall we say, Joe Burrow was speaking and saying this, that, and the other. It was actually kind of towards the end. A couple of these questions popped in.
You can't hear the question. I cut it out because it was kind of faint. But this Joe Burrow clip starts with a question about, have you thought about this being the final game for you, T, and Jamar together?
I haven't really thought about that. It's obviously a possibility, not one that I'm excited about, but that's not in the plans, I would say.
In that kind of same vein, do you watch games when you're watching other teams play with players that formerly played here that have gone on to play really well with their new teams? I mean, the fan response sometimes is, I wish we could have kept him, or, why weren't we able to keep X player? Or do you find yourself having a little bit of that spite when you watch one of your former teammates perform really well for another team?
Yeah, whenever a great player leaves, you wish you could have found a way to keep them. You don't want to make a living out of letting great players leave the building. And I think that's why you got to do everything you can to get those deals done early.
So 2 sentences for me, Jay, and I think that resonate the most, and why this stood out as real news. I mean, it's not just Joe answering a question that he was asked. I think there were 2 parts of it, and that was, that's still the plan, I would say, about Tee Higgins not leaving.
Yeah.
And again, redoubling down that I have a plan. We have a plan to make this happen. And we've heard a number of times from this point that, it's going to be chess and it's hard to do, and you got to figure out ways to do it. And we know that Burrow, it certainly seems like Burrow is willing to restructure here as part of this. And how does that all, how he's now T has Jamar's agent. We know all that background, but this is kind of a doubling down on this. The plan is not that he leaves, and everybody now knows my plan, and the one I'm supporting is that Tee Higgins stays here. And I think that that stood out as number 1 to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. That saying that I think he said that's not the plan, is to let him leave. But I mean, whose plan is that? Maybe that is Joe saying, I'm willing to do what it takes to keep him, but is the front office willing to do what it takes to keep him? And it was important to note too that you guys, the viewers, the listeners, hear that what 60-70 second snippet. This was about a 15-minute press conference. And anytime you start getting over 12-13 with Joe, he starts looking at the clock, the answers start getting a little shorter. That was going on until these questions came up. And he made it a point to say what he wasn't trying to get out of there at that juncture. He wanted to say what he thought needed to be said in response to these questions. It was kind of surprising that they came up so much later in the press conference as opposed to earlier, and it almost seemed like he was waiting for somebody to ask, and he had something to say, and he said it.
The other part of that being, that's why you got to get these deals done early. I mean, and I don't. You can sit here and parse through stuff and say, oh, well, maybe that's a direct shot at the front office. Like that is the reason that this is so hard is because you guys didn't get these deals done early. You could have gotten T done a couple of years ago. You could have gotten Jamar done before last season started, which is, the most egregious of all of these situations where you get close to the finish line with Jamar and can't get over the top. And now it's going to cost you a ton more and make this whole thing so much harder. And Joe has that right. But when you have a situation where you set up Joe for the first time really kind of publicly wielding this power and continuing to take aim at this situation, his plan could have gotten done early. This is the plan. This needs to happen. And so it puts so much pressure and it directs all eyes at the Bengals front office to actually be the ones to get this done. And if they don't, all of this stuff that's been out here now over the last month with this latest doubling down and pointing out the different aspects of it in terms of could have got it done early and all this other stuff, and this is the plan, and all of that sits there, and you say, okay, well, it becomes their fault. It becomes the front office's fault if they can't get this done.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time where the Bengals typically don't make a move until they have to. And it does get harder when you keep kicking the can down the road, because the players keep playing better, the price keeps going up, but it also gets harder because you invite competition into the process, and you get it done early. No other teams can jump in and engage in a bidding war. You get out in front of it, and it's just you and the player, and you're trying to come to an agreement. Now, I mean, maybe T wants to stay here. He said he wouldn't be opposed to it. But still, if you get to the end of this year, and maybe they franchise tag him, but still, if he gets into free agency, these other teams are going to come in and be throwing way more money, wide receiver one money, that maybe the Bengals aren't willing to go there, and it creates that extra variable that you didn't need to have in the mix.
Yep. The moment it reaches free agency, I mean, the Bengals position themselves into a place with no leverage. They don't have leverage over Chase. They don't have leverage over T. They've lost all of it, and when that happens, we know, we've seen what happens, and the Bengals aren't going to go to uncomfortable places financially, but will they do it if their quarterback is out here publicly taking aim at them? And what happens if they don't? What is that residual effect with that quarterback and the impact there? I think that's really the biggest underlying thing here. That's going to be the long game of this, where we'll keep turning back to these comments as we go through the offseason. We'll have a lot more time where we're going to discuss T and a number of other free agents that are going to be in similar situations. When we'll start talking, the pie's going to come back. We're going to start talking about the pie again a lot. That's all going to be part of this. And so there's going to be a ton of that, but we'll come back to these comments, and that'll be the thing is, well, what's the impact then with Joe and the way he feels about it? And how much does that matter as we really see him kind of publicly take this stance for the first time? It's so interesting because you don't really see a stance being over one guy often, but I think you can come down to one decision. You can say who won. Did the front office take a stand, or did Burrow win? Or did they find a common place? Can they come out and say they found a common place together if they can bring him back? But if he goes, it will certainly feel like the front office told Joe, no, we're not going to do what you say this plan could be. And that will be very interesting to see how that lands. That said, it's about this decision. It's about Tee Higgins. So T also spoke. This was Wednesday, and Dan Horde was poking around, and you can see how this went.
Whether it's here or elsewhere, T, you're going to get a long-term deal at the end of this year. Are you looking forward to the day where these are not the questions that you get every week or two?
Yeah, actually, I'm tired of these questions. I'm tired of seeing my name speculating on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Just with all the stuff. I mean, it's a good thing at the end of the day, because, it's always a good thing if somebody wants you. You know what I mean? But definitely looking forward to the day so I stop getting these questions.
I do have another contract question. What are your priorities going to be at the end of the year?
At the end of this year?
Yeah. So
my main priorities.
Winning, getting paid. What's at the top of your list?
Obviously, we want to win and make the playoffs. That's the main thing. But, if it wasn't to happen, my main priority is to take some time away from this game, enjoy life, enjoy family, and then whatever comes next, I'll let God handle all that.
I meant, though,
I know what you meant. I know exactly what you meant.
Yeah, so that's an evasive. I don't really want to discuss that.
I ran around that question.
Fair enough.
I know what you meant.
Yep.
I know what you I get it. And T said it well there. I think it's like you get tired of seeing it, but it's a good thing. His name being out there is because he's at the top of the free agent list, and he's now at the center of this conversation because everyone recognizes his talent and how much he's going to get paid. And that's all part of it. The hometown discount thing, that's kind of, is he going to take that? Is he going to be willing to do that? We've seen some conversation about that and things that he said. It's nice to say that and say that you want to stay, but in the history of free agency, 98% of the time, it's been a zero-sum game. That you either have the money or you don't have the money, and that's typically the way it goes. Maybe this will be different, but it certainly can't be dramatically different if you're Tee Higgins.
Yeah, I thought it was really smart of him to the way because later he said he would not be opposed to staying here. He didn't say I want to stay here, and the way he kind of went around Dan's question, because if he says the most important thing is money, which for a lot of these guys it is, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. If he says the most important thing is to have a chance to win a Super Bowl, well, then the front office's ears perk up and like, oh, we got leverage now. He wants to stay here. He wants to be a part of this. We can play a little bit more hardball. So I thought he handled it really well. He was also asked about switching agents and joining Rocky Arsenault, Jamar's agent, and he said he did not want to answer that question. So he did a good job of answering, giving enough of an answer, but without really going all the way in and dancing or running around the question, as he said to Dan.
Yeah, and like none of it really matters. Like none of what he really says really matters. I mean, this is going to come down again. It's going to come down to money and situation and structure and all that stuff, and we'll see how that all plays out. Plenty of time to dive into that as we get into the offseason. For now, though, let's dive into Bengals-Steelers on Saturday night. A little bit of outlook here. We have the Steelers, who are 10-6. They are one game behind the Ravens to win for the AFC North. There's a good chance that will be off the table by the time kickoff happens, as the Browns are dedicated to losing and getting a better draft pick against them. They've lost 3 in a row. It's been a hellacious turn of events in the North over the last couple of weeks, as the Ravens have won 3 in a row. The Steelers have been reeling. These 3 games and 11 games they had to play, with Christmas being the exclamation point on that, seemed to wear on them, and they've gotten beaten up. The Bengals are favored by 1.5. The over-under is at 48. How about this? The interesting thing about this with the Steelers of late is you've seen their defense fall off. And now you saw the Bengals on December 1st prove that when they put up 38 points and prove that they can put up a bunch of points on Pittsburgh. But that's been consistent. So since week 12, the Steelers defense is 24th in points per drive, 20th in EPA per play, 22nd in success percentage, 21st in the red zone. And they're 6th in turnover rate. Bengals are actually first. That's been the thing saving them, has been they've been getting turnovers, but everything else, their defense has really been struggling.
Yeah, it has. And it's kind of surprising to see. I mean, they've played some good teams, but even that Bengals game, they gave up 38 to the Bengals, before this losing streak started. And if the Bengals defense is bad, and we've talked about it all year, you still have faith that Joe Burrow and this offense can overcome it. If the Steelers defense is bad, I don't see that offense being able to overcome that and making a run. Maybe they can overcome it and win this game Saturday night, but I don't see the Steelers going deep in the playoffs. And, you wonder what that mindset is going to be like, because they've got to be pissed off. 3 straight double-digit losses, first time since 1988 that's happened. But if as we expect to, if the Ravens just beat the Browns and win the division, the Steelers are still playing for a seed, and they would much rather go to Houston than Baltimore. But is that just that little bit of a psychological knock that you just kind of a little bit deflated before you even start against the Bengals, knowing you can't win the division? I really wonder what that team's mindset's going to be like. And they've got guys on that defense that are a little nicked up, and maybe they pull them at some point. I know Tomlin said they're throwing everybody out there, and they're going to play it like they would regardless, even if Baltimore wins. But I just wonder if it's in the back of their minds that let's just get through this one and get on to the playoffs.
It might be in the back of their minds. I don't see it being in the back of Mike Tomlin's mind. That's not his way. He doesn't give them days off in camp. He doesn't give them days off in the offseason. He's not going to go out there and give them days off the last week of the season, especially when they've lost 3 in a row. I don't see that. I don't see that as his personality or anything that he would accept or want to be part of his team. And now there's critics. This is funny because this sort of conversation about the Bengals and their country club off season and how they take it easy. And Zach Taylor always says it's my sole focus as a team that's fresh and playing their best at the end of the year. And that's been the case. They are playing their best here at the end of the year. They're dinged up. They have a lot of injuries, the Bengals do. But a team that is this a Steelers team that is worn down as they get to this point in the season and wearing down from that, the months of that being the philosophy versus maybe a Bengals team that has a little bit more juice at the end of the year. And which one's better? I don't know. Pittsburgh's going to make the playoffs. The Bengals are currently need 3 things to happen for them to get in. So you be the judge. But, it is interesting that they play at this point in the season. This is the one that Zach Taylor says this is what he's supposed to be building for and what he's supposed to be about. And maybe the knock against Mike Tomlin and teams that have bowed out early in the postseason a lot. Very similar to the way a lot of Marvin Lewis's teams did. He really went hard on them all year long, and it wore on them. And you hear that from former players when they talk about some of the playoff loss stuff, the things that the Bengals used to have. And so curious to see how that plays out in regards to this game.
Yeah, for sure.
Steelers offense has been okay, but still it's not great. Since week 12, points per drive, they're 22nd, EPA per play 26, adjusted yards per attempt 14th. In the series, Pittsburgh is 1-4 of 5. And in those 5 games, they've racked up 11 picks and 20 sacks. Okay. Like that's been it. So key factor in this game, the key factor in so many of these Steelers Bengals games, it's turnovers and can they get one? And it was obviously a key factor in the first game between these two teams, as you had the strip sack and points for Pittsburgh, interception. So it needs to be a clean game from the Bengals. And if that's the case, they can keep it clean and not turn it over. You look at the way both teams are playing, then the arrow does point in a lot of ways in the Bengals' favor.
It's funny, though, because Joe Burrow basically said, everybody talks about that. They want to play a clean game and protect the ball, but he's basically given up on that. Says, when you play the Steelers, you're going to have turnovers. You just have to accept that. He's like, I throw a screen pass and TJ Watt jumps up and intercepts it, or a ball gets tipped. He's like, there's things that you wouldn't do any differently. They just find they've got great players on that side of the ball, and they're going to get turnovers. So then it becomes up to this defense to bow up and hold those turnovers to 3 or possibly even no points. It is 7 straight games that the Steelers have recorded at least 1 turnover against the Bengals. So you kind of just go into this game expecting that at some point there's going to be an interception or fumble, and they just can't let that be the game changer.
They just need to get their own as well, which is something that, again, they've been doing. They are best in the league since week 12 in turnover percentage per drive, and so maybe they can keep that going. They certainly are going to need to. All right, Jay, what is the referee outlook in this game? Is it the evil Ron Torbert this week, Jay?
I really thought it might be, but it is not.
It's not. Okay.
No. Turn the music off. It's actually this referee, John Hussey. It's the second game he's been scheduled to work of a Bengals game this year. It'll be the first time he actually does. He was supposed to work the Week 8 game against the Eagles and suffered a leg injury and was a late scratch in that game. So Hussey's been around for a long time. He's one of the most veteran guys in the league. The Bengals are 5-4 with him as the head referee, including 3 of the last 4 they've won. He's only done 1 Bengals-Steelers game. It was a memorable one. It was the Monday night Von Bell, Juju Smith-Schuster game. As far as where he ranks overall, again, we get a referee that is down at the bottom end of penalties. His crew is ranked 14th out of 17 crews in penalties per game. Last year he was 3rd. So, it's in him. They can throw a lot of flags, but this year they have not been. 11.6 per game, ranks 14th.
Love that. Love a low flag crew.
Yes.
Good to have him here. All right. So that's kind of a look at Bengals Steelers. Jay, you got some stats for me?
We've talked about Tee Higgins. Could be his final game as a Bengal. So I was curious what Bengals player has had the best final game in a Bengals jersey. I just looked at receivers, and I looked at the top 100 receivers in Bengals history in terms of career receiving yards. There's never been a 100-yard game for a Bengal player in his final game with the team. There's only 4 that have been more than 50. So you got Eddie Brown had a 91-yard performance in 1992, his final game with the team. Baby Hawk, 74 yards in his final game in 2013. Billy Brooks, 58 in 1979. And another name you may not expect to see on this list, but in 2011 with a 54-yard performance, Jerome Simpson.
Jerome Simpson. There you go. Love that.
I feel good about T. 91 is not a high bar. This could, and maybe it's not T's final game with the Bengals, but if it is, I think he could go out as the number one guy on this list.
Trick question, Jay. Trick question. Yes. All right, let's get in a run, pass, or boot here. What are we going to run, pass, or boot today?
Yeah, so the Steelers lit up the Bengals last time with they were short passes, but they went for long yardage because of the missed tackles. So what will be greater on Saturday night? The Steelers' longest reception, Cade York's longest field goal attempt. He doesn't even have to make it. They just have to trust him to kick one from any kind of decent distance, or non-Chase Higgins receiving yards for the Bengals.
Okay. I like this one. This is good. I'm with you. The trust factor can't be high. I mean, Darren Simmons spoke yesterday, and basically he's like, look, if Cade York messes up, it's probably the end for him in this league. He's bounced around. He's now missed that kick very publicly, shall we say, last week. And that's tape that's hard to run from if you're a kicker. And Zach Taylor, had no interest in kicking with him at the end of overtime last week as they were throwing into the end zone to try to win it. So that tells you where that's probably at. I will say that Steelers long reception, I'll run with that. I'm Gesicki, man. Gesicki and Yoshivash, they've found ways to make big plays. They've got, Burrow's not very comfortable going to them. So you could very much see one of those two guys being the reason for that. So I'll pass on that. I'll boot Cade York's longest attempt. I don't think we'll see a lot of that. I think we'll see a lot of going for it action. But yeah, so I got some encouraged. I feel like Gesicki and Yoshivash could have big games here, and certainly enough to win this. But I'll stick with where I went.
Yeah, I went with the same exact order. I agree that Gesicki or Yoshivash could have big games, but it feels like either Chase or Higgins is going to have a huge game. Pittsburgh's going to have to pick which guy they want to try to shut down, and the other one is going to have a day. And maybe Higgins gets all the targets, and they're just a bunch of pass interferences on Joey Porter Jr. and he doesn't actually get the yardage, but the Bengals move the ball. But and my mind just keeps going back to that game last year. How long was the George Pickens the one broken tackle and gone to start the game?
The exact yardage. I remember watching it. It was
75 or 80.
Yeah, about 80.
The DJ Turner play. And so I can see one of those happening in this game, or even just a straight up deep ball to George Pickens. He's a heck of a receiver, and Russell Wilson throws a really pretty deep ball. So I think that's kind of an easy run for me. And then the non-Higgins Chase yards, and Cade York again just booted. I'd be surprised if they had him try anything over 45.
Yeah. He did hit. He did hit
59.
From 59 the other day. So it's like, he can kick it far if he wants to. It's just a matter of, in a big moment, can he kick it accurately? So we'll see. You never know. All right, let's go. Let's do some Growler Bet here. Of course, we were so close to getting a winner last week, but did not. I have hope. New year, new giveaways. We're going to get some more winners on board here. Last game of the season, go out with a bang. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe playoff Growler Bets will just start flying off the board. Who knows? But, of course, Jay thinks there's a good chance. We're going to go Steelers Yak.
Yeah.
Steelers Yak. The first game, 264, was the highest by any team allowed in a game this year. And it was just, that was the what missed tackles. Yeah. You quick game, you can't stop quick game. They're just going to throw it to you and they're just going to run forever, right? Apparently. So we'll see if the Bengals have an answer for that, or if this will be another game where the Yak ends up taking over. So on that note, Jay, what's your guess?
Should we, because this could be all over the place.
Yeah, should we give a range for a winner?
I think we should.
Yeah,
2 or 3 yards either direction.
Yeah, let's go 3 yards either direction on Yak, on total Yak for the Steelers in this game.
All right. So you mentioned it, that the 264 in week 14 was the highest by anybody in the league this year. It was the Steelers' highest since 2019 when they had 325 against the Bengals. So I'm going to go closer to the Bengals average this year. They're averaging 122.4 yak allowed. I'm going to go 121.
121. Yeah, I don't, I still think you're going to see the tackling has been better. It was better last week. Last week they had 27 stops and 5 missed tackles via PFF, which was, the best ratio for them all year by a pretty wide margin. Stop being a solo tackle for an offensive failure. And, that was a solid move. I mean, a solid move. It was a move in the right direction, I should say, for them. And so you're thinking maybe they got it fixed, Jay. Maybe they got it figured out. I don't know, man. I don't know that I'm still totally buying it. They'll be prepared for it. It won't be 264, but I still think it'll be higher. I'll say 155.
Okay.
Is a decent number still for the Steelers in this game.
Steelers
right.
average, by the way, even with that 264 against the Bengals, the Steelers average this year is 88 per game.
Wow. All right. So make sure you send in those submissions to the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. You can, of course, send in Twitter, #Bengals Growler Bet, and we will get to those. Anything funny in the subject header of those emails, we'll give them a shot. Make me laugh, and we'll talk about them. You know how it goes. All right, let's go. Predictions, Jay.
I mean, I guess I tipped my hand at the opener where I said I think they've got a good chance to make the playoffs, or a better chance than people think. I do. The Steelers just are not playing well right now. The Bengals are. I think momentum and confidence is a big thing in this league, and it's a big thing in this rivalry. I know when you get the division games, you say throw the record out, but it's just something that this is a playoff game for the Bengals, and the Steelers know they're in the playoffs regardless. And I think that little bit of psychological edge is going to be just enough. I've got the Bengals squeaking this out. You said with the over-under is 48. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring than that. And I do wonder, I might have to look this up, but what's the biggest differential between points scored in one game versus points scored in a rematch? Because there was 82 points in the first game. I think we get half of that in this game. And Bengals 21, Steelers 20. Not Cade York at the gun.
Okay. Wow. I don't know that I anticipate low scoring. And I know I know the Steelers offense isn't a juggernaut, but man, it was just a month ago we saw 44 points with some help from the defense, obviously, but still, I don't know that I see this being low scoring. We've just seen too many of these Bengals games this year, and I don't know that their defense can just hold it down, even if the offense is scoring and it becomes a slugfest. The concern for me, it continues to be, these games that are going to be close. So many of them have been close. Cade York has to make you nervous at this point.
Yes.
And versus Chris Boswell, somebody who does not make Steelers fans nervous. That being a factor in a close game, one make versus one miss, that can be the difference in the game. And so I have the Steelers winning 30-28. Where you just have a couple of made field goals versus a couple of missed field goals, or going for it on 4th down and not getting it where you would have kicked the field goal type of thing, where it can affect the game in that respect too. I think special teams, it's a special teams league after all.
That's right.
You got to know
Castillo.
That's where the games swing, the close games swing. And I think that could be a major part of this one. And we'll see how it all plays out. But I feel like these are two teams. I just expect it to be close. And when it gets close and some of that being a factor, that's a concern in my book. Any ARBIES to wrap us up for you, Jay?
Yeah. Before I want to say, I appreciate you picking the Steelers because you have left the door open. You are 11-5 on your predictions this year. I'm 10-6. So if the Bengals win, we finish in a tie. If the Bengals win and get into the playoffs, then we can maybe break the tie. So I do appreciate you going the opposite direction.
Yeah, we went opposite last week too.
Yeah,
we went opposite last week. You picked the Bengals to win. You had the happy ending. stat where they once again won in the home finale, and I wasn't buying it. And both of us went back and forth on who was going to win that a million times, either direction. You ended up winning it. So I've left the door open for you 2 weeks in a row to come back. Maybe it will happen. Maybe we'll see. Arby's for you.
So my Arby's, we were in the media room yesterday, and Dan Horde said, Jay, you are someone who appreciates obscure stats like I do. Let's see if you can guess this. And he said there's only been 3. If nobody other than Burrow throws a pass Saturday night, it'll be just the 4th time in franchise history that one man threw every single pass in a season. Wow. And he's like, can you name the other 3? And so I was like, well, Andy had to have done it one of those years. And he said, yeah, 2016, Andy was the only one that threw a pass for the Bengals. And then I went John Kitna with the Carson Palmer sit out year, and Dan was floored that I got that. He thought that was going to be the hard one, the stumper. So I was proud of that I got that.
That's a good pull.
And then the third one I went Ken Anderson. I thought, back in those days in the 70s, early 80s, he might have just done it, but it was not. It was Carson Palmer in 2007. And it's not just quarterbacks. I mean, like the year that Mohamed Sanu threw the deep ball, or any other player other than the main quarterback. It's only happened 3 other times, and they've got a shot. Nobody's thrown a pass this year except Joe Burrow. 1 game to go.
Here it comes. Khalil Herbert throws a touchdown pass in the red zone to ruin Dan's stat. Oh, what could have been. Mine, I just want to the local chapter of the Pro Football Writers gave out the Media Cooperation Award this week, and gave it to Mike Hilton, it's all these. It's kind of a weird thing. Like, what is media cooperation? Like, it's not necessarily just about being nice to us, like, or whatever. I mean, that's tends to be part of it, but just somebody that understands our job, is respectful, available, and just in general, is. It used to be called the good guy, and it's like, you don't have to be a good guy. It's mostly about like respect and availability, and treating each other right. And it's almost like a career achievement award, because Hilton's been here for so long now, and he's been such a big part of this, and he's just always been as solid of a dude as you'll ever want. And it was hard because Sam Hubbard too is somebody who I thought certainly also was in this conversation and could have been. There's a number of guys on this team it could have gone to, either of those, but Mike Hilton is just an absolute gem, and I don't, people don't always even care about how they are with us, or does it even matter? But it does to us, and I wanted to make sure it got pointed out that he deserves that, because he's always there, he's always available, he'll talk to you in any way you want to, and just as nice of a guy as you'll ever meet, and one heck of a player, and genuine, and offers perspective. It's not just placating interviews. He's always trying to think about what he wants to say, and try to answer honestly, and just does it the absolute right way. He's been a pro's pro since the moment he walked in the door, and so appreciation to Mike, and congratulations to him on that award. He deserves it.
Yeah, and what you said was right, where it's not just about always saying yes to an interview. It's giving good interviews and real talk. Mike, he shoots it straight, and he gives you good information. And I voted for Orlando. I just thought he's been, and there's a lot of, it was a tough year. There's a lot of guys that you could have voted for this year. But Mike it's one of those things where so many times an interview will start, and then new people come in and start asking the same questions that have already been answered. And some players get frustrated with that. Some kind of take the passive aggressive approach. Like I said earlier, but Mike never did that. Mike would answer every single question. He never was trying to get short at the end and end things. A lot of times the interview will end and people still kind of stick around and just, kind of shoot the breeze and talk, not off the record stuff, but just non-football stuff. And he's just always been there for whoever had a question.
Yeah, just a really good dude, and you wish the best for him, whether it's still here in Cincinnati or elsewhere or whatever. And he still thinks he's got some good years left. And I think if you look at the way that he's been playing lately, in particular, I think he's kind of proving it. He doesn't really even need to say it anymore. That he can still play and make an impact for teams in this league. So, all right. On that note, Houday Light will be back tomorrow, leading in, and then Jay and I will be in Pittsburgh this weekend, and we'll have the walkout for you as the Bengals play the Steelers in just the latest of our 5 primetime road games this year. And we finally wrap that part up and then see if we'll be watching on Sunday to see what's going on Sunday with the Bengals potentially sneaking into the playoffs, which Jay seems to think there's a chance it could happen. He's on.
It'll be a 6th primetime road game because they will go to Buffalo on the Saturday night game if that happens.
Please, more. All right. On that note, thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Have a good one, everybody.